Oh.
Didn't you put the mic in your mouth at one point? Did you just do a recording?
I haven't started yet. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name, of course, is Seesaw or Chris. With me, I've got Salvage or... Salvation... Wait, what?
I don't even... Salvage...
Why don't you just call us Ryan and Brandon?
In Guild Wars 2, it's Redemption. I gotta figure out my character names here, I guess.
With me, I've got Ryan and Brandon. I'm not restarting the intro. I like that. And today we're talking about Guild Wars 2, and in specific, we're going to be talking about Heart of Thorns legendaries, past legendaries, legendary items, that kind of shit. We've got a few questions we want to talk about and sort of see how you guys feel about them as well, because it's been a hotly debated topic during Heart of Thorns. And it's good to talk about because the developers get feedback. I mean, us as players get the vent. It's fun. So the first question that we really wanted to talk about is, assuming that there is now legendary weapons and legendary armor, if you had a character that had full-on legendary weapons, like, you know, all your weapons are legendary, and had full legendary armor, why would you ever customize your look, change your cosmetics from those items that are the best in the game? Is this a problem? Does it hurt revenues for, Guild Wars 2? You guys can talk.
I mean, you two actually have legendaries right now, and as I've said in the probably most recent video to this one, I'm almost on my first legendary, which is Nevermore, and yeah, it's a good point, because I know when I get Nevermore, immediately all characters I have that uses staff are probably going to have that skin for at least 6 months before I change it.
Right?
I mean, honestly.
Yeah, it's like one of the hottest skins in the game.
Yeah, like
if not the.
I love Nevermore. I love it so much. But, and, I mean, I think, undoubtedly, legendaries are a good thing in Guild Wars 2. Like, I know other games have had legendaries before, not to the extent in Guild Wars 2 where there's stat swapping. But, like, for example, World of Warcraft has had legendaries before in the past, but Guild Wars 2 legendaries are completely unique. There haven't been legendaries like that before, where you get footfall effects, you get a combat effect when you draw it,
auras,
where there's
and all
auras
that,
on your hands. And so I think undoubtedly legendaries are a positive feature in the game, but it is a good point, especially I think what this will eventually end up being discussed is with legendary armor coming into the game. It'll be a lot more noticeable if people stop playing Fashion Wars 2, because even with people rocking their legendaries all the time, because why would you use another sword skin other than Twilight if you have Twilight, for example? But it'll become a lot more noticeable now with people not playing Fashion Wars 2 on their armor.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. What do you think, Brandon? You have a legendary sword.
I have Twilight, and right now it works great for like a piece of gear I can transfer to my Necro for when I want to DPS on him for my warrior. But I think I'm actually going to get a different sword and use that skin on my Necro, because I think it would look better without Twilight. I think the Necro looks better with like a thinner sword, like the samurai sword in the auction house.
So you actually
I don't know. I think the legendary completes a look for some characters, but not others. And I feel like it's a nice skin, but at the same time, I want some of my characters to look different,
right?
Versus having all the same.
Gear.
Looks.
Yeah, and I guess that is like the fact that there are alternative characters on accounts means that you will have different looks. You don't want them to all have, the legendary heavy armor and a great sword or something like that. That's also legendary. You want them to all look fairly different. And I guess the other big thing, especially for legendary armor, is although we have it, people who don't raid, which is actually a large part of Guild Wars 2, won't have it.
Yeah.
So it probably won't actually hurt the economy as bad as we're stating at this point. And I know people are salty by the fact that only raiders will have it, but maybe it's a good thing, because if everyone could have it and it was, maybe as hard as getting 2 legendaries or something like that to get otherwise, it could hurt the economy eventually.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, because there's I think like one of the most expensive some of the most expensive items in the auction house right now aren't legendaries. There's the staff skin for the scythe, which is like a couple thousand gold. 5k, which is actually more than some legendaries.
Yeah.
Same with the ghastly shield is close, like 4 or 5k. It's not a legendary, but it costs more than some of them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to kill the economy by everybody having it. There's still skins out there that are just as nice, if not nicer than. I think like the ghostly shield or like the ghastly, like the black shield with like the black kind of smoke looks a lot nicer than the legendary shield does.
Well, and that actually gets us into one of our other questions. What do you think of, well, the new style of legendaries? Like a lot of the new legendaries we've had recently are the torch, the new rifle, the shield with the little mini quaggan in it, and then the other Heart of Thorns weapons that we have. Has it been trending towards pretty good looks, or has it been a bit funny for some people? Like, because
their legendaries are like, they're either really cool looking or kind of jokingly looking. None of them really bring like realism to the game, because I mean like Twilight and Eternity have like the sky in them.
Yeah, I don't think any.
So like none of them really are about reality, but some of them look more like a serious badass weapon, and some of them look more like a joke. Like the pistol kind of shoots fireworks. The shield has a cute little quaggan.
Does the lack of realism bug you? Because to me, since it's a fantasy game, it's never really bugged me too much to have, a spirit raven, to have the sky in a sword, or a bow when you critical hit, flowers go to the target. It's never really
I don't mind the lack
taken me out of the game.
I don't really mind the lack of realism, because it seems like everything sort of follows like a very fantasy kind of look.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's nice in games to have like really realistic looking stuff. You can kind of create cooler armors and.
Yeah. Well, and Guild Wars 2 does have real looking armor. Like you could have someone who was completely dressed and looked like they were from our world, right? Like you could.
The ascended armor, the heavy ascended armor looks pretty like could reasonably have easily been actual knight's armor. It's not, and I like a lot of fantasy armor, but there is the potential in Guild Wars 2 to make something that would look completely historically accurate to an actual medieval warrior or a tracker, or
Yeah. How about how we actually acquire the weapons now? So there's been 3 different systems that they've tried, and I'll just explain them briefly for people who might not have tried any of them. The very first one that came with the launch of Guild Wars 2 was largely based on gold. Like you could buy most of it except for map completion, and there was a few, like you had to play World v World for a bit. You had to do some open world stuff. You didn't have to do anything in PvP though, like any SPVP stuff. I don't think you need to do for Legendary.
Well, I was gonna say you need to for the gift of glory or whatever, but I guess you can just buy shards of glory out of the auction.
Right, you can just buy that, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say it's mostly based on having the money to get it, which is fine.
Yeah.
Map completion is the biggest pain for most people who do it, but
a little bit of world versus world.
A little. It's a cool system. The next one was the actual Heart of Thorns collections, and this is only for, I think, was it 3 or 4 weapons?
Astralaria, Hope, Nevermore.
Shusha-do or whatever.
No.
Those are the new one.
No, I think
the mace. What's the mace?
Eureka, but that was the first
new.
one introduced with the new system.
So yeah, it's just those few weapons, and they have a very... Oh, and Chukin Chukwap.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, the short bow.
Yeah.
Those 4 weapons have a very specific quest that's very detailed. Ryan actually can probably talk the most about this because he's working on Twilight right now and just
Nevermore.
Oh. Nevermore. I'm sorry, I butchered his beautiful weapon that he's working on. No, okay, but just give us an idea of what it's like.
So I can't speak too much to the newest system for Heart of Thorns Legendaries, which is definitely, I think everyone in the community has to at some point look at the glass half full, and that at least we're going to be getting all the new Legendaries, even if the system isn't what it was originally meant to be. But for the collection system, I love it. It's probably one of the most... I've been more immersed into the story of actually getting this weapon than I was in dungeon stories, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Raid stories are incredible. They take the cake. And Living Story Season 3 and the main story is incredible, but it's cheesy but true that you really do feel like you raise a raven from egg to hatchling to adult. I mean, part of the collection is you build a incubation box, you build nesting materials, you take it to certain areas of the world to heat it up and get it to hatch. The next part is you feed it certain things. Another part when it's still an egg is actually you take the egg to certain parts of the world and introduce it to certain different energies. So you take it to the Chaos Behemoth world boss to introduce it to Chaos to prep it for the fractals. which you later have to take it into the fractals. It really is incredible, and the third part of the collection is you go around the world chasing this Raven Spirit all around, all through low-level areas, through Heart of Thorns maps, through fractals, and you chase it all over the place, and you really do feel like you're chasing a spirit all around until you finally find it and capture it. And then the fourth story is raising a Raven and melding the Raven Spirit and the Raven together, and it's been incredible. Actually doing this collection has given me an appreciation to how it would be nearly impossible for them to do the rest of the 15 weapons this way.
Just based on how much work it is.
Oh my, a lot of it uses old content, but still having to put, the fourth part of the collection is 64 parts.
Yeah.
And sure, some of that is crafting, so, it's just thinking of a recipe and putting in your thumbnail for an item, but, it would be incredibly difficult because it's not just, a lot of people say, it's just using old content, what's the big deal, but you can tell thought and care was put into this. Would you be as happy with Chuk and Chump of Water, Nevermore, if it was if it wasn't thought out, if it was go get these 5 ravens that are in nowhere of importance and, forget about it. The ravens are actually in places that make sense. They're on ledges. There's tons in Norn starting areas where there's actually temples to ravens.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
It's going to make it feel more legendary, too, because you're actually taking that much time out of your gameplay to actually craft it, which makes it feel like a better weapon.
Yeah, you've started the first part of the collection, too.
Yeah, I'm on the crafting part. I think I'm one step behind Ryan on it, because I was working on Twilight before, so I was kind of in between them.
And what were your thoughts of the first part of the collection?
The first part of the collection wasn't even bad. It goes by pretty quick.
Yeah,
the first part. It sounds like the part Ryan's on right now is pretty.
It becomes more work as you go on.
More work.
Well, to me, the most difficult part was the beginning of the second. Well, the second collection is a lot of interaction with the actual legendary merchants. It's tons of gold, lots of farming. I spent way too much time in the silver wastes and actually PvP'd for most of my geodes using the dry top reward track.
Yeah.
Getting carcass shells, it is cool because taking on a legendary as I started my second year of university definitely slowed the process, but I got an app on my phone with all the world boss event timers, so I'd log on in between classes if I had an hour and kill a Karka Queen for a couple carcass shells, and it was cool in that way because the biggest thing for Heart of Thorns legendaries, and I think all legendaries in the game, and it's probably a misconception, is in Guild Wars 2, unlike a lot of other games, you don't have to be skilled, you don't have to be good at the game to get legendary.
Yeah.
You just have to be patient.
Yeah, you just have to work.
Yeah. Legendary armor, it's a little bit different with raids.
Yeah.
But, it'll take a while, but you don't have to be good at the game to get legendary. You just have to be patient. You actually have to see it through. You have to understand this isn't something you're going to complete in 3 months unless you are comfortable buying parts of it, which lots of people are. After this experience, I definitely would be more open to spending money on a legendary next time, even if it's just for some of the more frustrating parts.
Just for some gold to craft part of it.
Yeah. Well, and that gets us to the third version of getting legendaries, which is what the new legendaries have, and it's mostly about just buying stuff. Like there's new currencies in the Living World map, and you can buy it, but each of the legendaries is exactly the same. You just have to buy a few types of currency. You forge everything, put it in the Mystic Forge, and you get your legendary. And that's why we have a lot of people, when there is a new legendary released, you have people that exact same day who have it, because they knew what the recipe was going to be. They could have it all almost in their bank, ready to go, and voila, they have it the first day. Which is cool, but then it's is it that hard to get that weapon? Yes, it's a lot of money.
It kind of makes it less special.
It makes it a bit less special.
Yeah.
The benefit, though, is that they've put in a legendary almost every Living Story episode.
Yeah.
Whereas they were originally going to cancel them, right? They were going to have no more. So there's a trade-off there. Which system's the best then? Probably, in an ideal world, the Nevermore collection, those collections would be the best way to do it.
Yeah.
I liked...
In an ideal world, but it would be almost impossible. Unless they were to take a break for a couple years, have a small team work on them all, and then maybe 2 expansions down the line, they say, okay, we've learned, we've developed, we've directed more resources towards this, and we can actually introduce a third generation of Legendaries more comfortably. But
they need to find a balance, I think. I don't really like the fact that like some of them are like the Gift of Fortune, where it's just like spend a bunch of gold. Which, I mean, or you could just buy, like, go and actually farm the stuff and take a while. I don't really like the idea of, like, just spend money on it. It makes it feel, like, less special and, like, you just kind of bought stuff.
Yeah.
I did do the collection for Dusk, and right around the end of the collection, when I was about to get Dusk, it just dropped for me anyway. I don't really have things randomly dropping. It kind of, because then it's like you have to wait for it, you have to buy it from the auction house. I kind of like the idea of doing the collection for it.
Well, and it was good that they added the collection. So
yeah, it was good so that it wasn't like you have to have a bunch of luck or spend a bunch of gold.
Yeah.
But I at the same time, I don't really like the idea of like you can just store your bank full of stuff and craft something in a day. They need to find a balance between like you go out and collect stuff and do achievements, which I like about the raids, where collecting the legendary armor is more based on achievements for the first part.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. But at the same time, I don't think it should be like take you forever, where it's such a long collection process that they can't push out as many legendaries.
True. And for the people out there, I there's definitely people who could get Nevermore a hell of a lot faster than I did.
Yeah.
I started out with no information. I decided to look up the collection and started. So I had practically but I had not really worried about collecting the Leyline Sparks or the Dragonite, or, I wasn't really...
If you had known in advance, you could have had it a lot.
Yeah, looking it up and then seeing, oh my god, I need 250 airship oils, why the fuck was I throwing those out?
Well, and now, whenever I'm in any of those maps, and I see one of those, like, things that I could pick up some of the stuff, I always get it, like, just in case, because it's gonna... You're like, I'm gonna, like, need it one day, and... no, it's good. So another question we have is, should legendary weapons and armor always be the top tier weapons and armor in the game? And like, I mean, obviously right now, their stance is that ascended armor should be the top tier for the game. However, we're gonna have another video on that and how, eventually people are gonna run out of stuff to try and get if that is the actual case.
Yeah.
But that's a discussion for another video. Our question here is, should legendary armor always scale up to be whatever the top gear is, or should it, eventually you need to get a new legendary because your old legendary does it. Like in WoW, there's past legendaries that are like level 6 or 60, and aren't, they're legendary still, but they're not at all
Technically speaking, you could solo all that content now because with their raids not upscaling, I mean...
Yeah, so it would be easier to get to,
Lich King easily.
Okay, but and so in Guild Wars 2, should the gear go up? Should it not?
It's good where I don't think it should be below Ascended right now, especially for the legendary armor. Like, I think that should maybe be... Like, if they scale up the gear next, I think the legendary armor should scale up to that, because you earn Ascended armor through the raids. If you do all the raids, achievements, and everything, and you get the legendary armor, you get something better than Ascended. You go the extra mile, you should get something a little better. But maybe if they add... Some people
will be salty as fuck about that, but no, that's a good point.
Yeah. But I mean, if they add like a new stretch of raids, like say they add like 4 or 5 more raids, then they could add another set of legendary armor that's maybe above this one or something. Yeah. But maybe the set of legendary armor they have in now is the top stats in the game for that next raid, or you can earn the top stats in game from doing the raids and a new currency.
So like have the legendary armor of like that expansion kind of be the best stats for that.
Yeah,
that
I think
set of content.
Eventually, they're gonna have to either add something to the gear treadmill, like another step up in gear, or like even maybe you add like another few levels to the top. I don't want them to continue to add a bunch of levels, because in WoW it kind of got like they added so many levels. It's almost impossible for somebody to get into the game and start it.
It really, it's just of how big of a task it is.
Yeah, because eventually it's like you have to get to like level 100 or something, and it's like how many game hours do you have to put in to get to just to actually play the majority of the game.
Yeah.
Even though they adjusted so that the lower levels are really easy to get through, I do think that, I mean, being a new person starting WoW and starting out with your little level 1 and knowing, holy fuck, level 110 is the cap, it would definitely be intimidating, and it might force people to just buy a character booster, which you can do now.
This is all good. Like, another video we'll be discussing, how we think there should be endgame progression. That's a whole nother topic. Ryan, you had said that you had an interesting way that they could.
So if they were to add a new tier above Ascended with higher stats, so to continue the treadmill, which, and gonna probably have a lot of people that disagree with this, but I personally think, maybe not right away, but at some point, there has to be something else to go after. The point of an MMO, in my opinion, is to feel like you're always improving. And sure, it would be a bit ridiculous to do that all the time, and every raid introduce a new set of high gear. I don't think that's a good idea, but I think at some point there has to be some level of progression other than chasing skins and achievements. For me personally, there's lots of people that chasing achievements and skins for them is enough progression. But my idea for this specific topic is, so if a new tier were to be added for legendary armor and weapons, I don't think they should be immediately up leveled actually, but I think there needs to be a system so that they can eventually be the top tier again. So what I mean by that is, if something comes out and Nevermore is no longer best in slot stats, maybe there's a universal between all the legendaries. It doesn't have to be specific, but throughout all the legendaries, there's a collection part 5. You do that collection, you make it so that your weapon is best in slot again.
And maybe it even just upgrades the skin a little bit to add something to it.
Well, that'd be cool.
That'd be excellent, but I would be totally fine if it was just...
Well, you could, because people are going to want it to upgrade the skin. They're not going to want to say this weapon's better now, but it looks the same. They could have just bumped my stats up. I think there should be something a little bit different than that.
Yeah,
then even if you liked the old look better, you can always switch just transmute it. Yeah, you have that skin forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. That's a good system.
I've got one question. Do you have anything else? Because I've got a question I just thought of.
You do your question, yeah.
Alright, so I have absolutely zero hope this will be in the next expansion, and there might not be one, so this might be completely hypothetical. But let's say 2 expansions, 3 expansions, whatever it may be, down the road, ArenaNet, and we're going to pretend it's perfectly implemented, alright? We're just, for the sake of this question, it's perfectly implemented. They get out a 3rd generation of legendaries. What would you think of them then putting Heart of Thorns legendaries into the auction house?
Oh,
what would your opinion on that be?
It's kind of a ripoff for anybody that had to go through all that.
Well, I mean,
there's a lot of people out there that make legendaries to sell them, and
it's true, because I actually do. I think that's a really cool way to make a bit of money, is to focus your efforts on one big item to sell. Because I did that with Eternity. I sold it, and I still have the 2 skins for Twilight and Sunrise, which is a super good deal. But I think it would be a good thing, and I mean, I can't say it because I haven't actually made one of the hard to get ones, but I personally wouldn't have issues with it right now.
They kind of feel more special, the fact that you can't buy them in the auction house. That it makes them feel of a higher quality almost.
Of a higher, no, and that's true too. I mean, they are still expensive to make even without being in the auction house.
Yeah.
So
I wish they'd almost make them less about money and more about achievements. Like I kind of like how right now the Crystalline Heart and all that stuff is more about going into raids and doing achievements and completing stuff.
It's good, but I mean, we also have to look at it as ArenaNet, because they want people to need money.
Yeah,
right?
They
want
fair.
people to pay money for their cool weapons that they developed.
Yeah.
Because playing the game, like just game time, doesn't equate to money for them because there's no subscription fee.
That's true.
So they need someone to, hey, I'm going to buy, $10 worth of gold today because I just want it. Like, so I think there should be a balance there. There should for sure be a balance, but I don't think it should never be just money. And I don't think any of the legendary acquisition so far, none of it's just money.
No.
Every single one, you at least need to explore the maps.
Yeah, unless you straight up buy it out of the auction house.
Unless so the very first ones you can do just money now. Yeah. But someone has done the content for it.
Yeah.
Every single weapon, someone's done the content.
That's I know true. I wouldn't sell Nevermore once I have it.
Yeah,
even if I got the option after equipping it,
especially
I know
because you spent so much time on it.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time,
just saved all that
if I had a precursor drop for me and by some luck I
doing some strategy.
I checked my, deposited materials and realized, wow, you know what, I'm only 500 gold away from finishing this legendary somehow. I would totally finish that legendary even if I'm just going to sell it because I don't like that specific legendary. I don't have a need for it.
All right, my last question, because I know it's been actually a pretty long video now, and this is the most relevant thing that we know right now, is that they are going to continue making the Heart of Thorns Legendaries. They're going to release them as they do right now, sort of with each Living Story episode, and they're going to continue to release them into the next expansion. So, like Living Story 4, Season 4, they'll continue releasing Heart of Thorns Legendaries. People will not need to buy the new expansion to get those legendaries.
Yeah, that's excellent.
People are still kind of upset because it was like, hey, these legendaries were supposed to be for this expansion, but they're going into another expansion.
Yeah.
I personally don't think that's a big deal at all for me, because I didn't buy this expansion for the legendaries.
No, me neither.
It was a cool part of it.
Yeah.
For me, it was the raids, but that's a whole different topic. Does either of you have an issue with that? Like,
I don't. I get why people have an issue with it.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense that people have an issue with it because they were promised a bunch of legendaries. They didn't quite get what they were promised. But at the same time, I don't know. It doesn't bug me.
It's not. It would have been a huge, big deal. Like if you had to buy the next expansion to get those legendaries. That would be an issue. And I would agree.
But even though no matter what, I'm for sure buying the next expansion. So still, I'd get them. But that'd be obviously a big.
But
issue.
It would be an issue marketing wise.
No, I mean, I think for some reason, I think ArenaNet in general gets too much criticism. I think. This community in general, it's almost become a bit of like a meme or whatever to try to rag on the developers for literally every I mean, even after... So this is being filmed pretty much after episode 5 of the Living Story. And that same day you see in map chat, oh, I just finished Living Story Season 5, guess I wonder what I'm going to do the next 3 months. Like... That's so fucking unreasonable.
Yeah.
And I think ArenaNet, I think they get way too much flack for what they can actually provide for the community.
Well,
and the legendaries, sure, a disappointment.
Yeah.
But we're gonna get them. I know, as somebody who's been waiting so long to see what the longbow's looking like, I want to see what the new legendary longbow's gonna be so bad. But I'm gonna get it at some point. Is the system what they originally promised? No. But at some point, you just got to be happy that we are going to get them. And sure, there's probably people out there that just bought Heart of Thorns for the legendaries. But let's be honest, there's way more people out there that didn't. And we have to at some point, despite what your own personal biases might be, I mean, it would be unreasonable for ArenaNet to dedicate like a 40-man team to legendaries just to get those out.
Yeah.
So a bit of a disappointment, but I think people need to just sort of say, yeah, you know what, not ignore it, like say, you know, you fucked up, but I think there's got to be a point where, you know, you start to actually focus on the positives, because this last year for Guild Wars 2 has been incredible.
Yeah.
And the praise the ArenaNet developers get is not nearly what it should be compared to the shit the community gives them when they fuck up on something.
I'd rather have better content than better weapons to not play content with.
And that's a great point. I think that's because I think we all share that idea, and that's a good thing to leave it off on.
Yep.
Since it's a pretty long video.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Hopefully you didn't actually just watch the video. Maybe you like listened while playing the game or something like that, because it's a pretty long video. Hopefully we'll see you in some more videos. Be sure to post your own thoughts on this. Give us some ideas for other things to talk about. But until next time, I've been Chris.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks guys.
All right, see ya.